Satnam, Satnam, yogis and yoginis, hello. Vampires and skeletons, welcome everyone. Everyone is welcome in today's stream. We are going to talk about Halloween because it's only 1 week away and everybody's getting ready for it. And I was thinking whether we should talk about it today or next week, but actually today is great because you can prepare for Halloween through what we're going to be doing today. We're going to talk about Halloween, about what it represents, why is it so attractive, what possibly positive outcomes could that have, and how can we employ it in a yogic kind of way. So that's my approach for today's talk. And we will do also a pranayam. That's my expectation. We'll see how it goes, the conversation. But we will do a pranayam, a type of breath that is going to be specifically designed for fears, for something specific about fears. Not anything about fears, but something specific. But that's coming up later. That will be at the end of the talk. And first, I hope we have a conversation, a spooky one. If you are online, feel free to talk to me and tell me your experience with Halloween. How do you relate to it? Do you enjoy it? Do you stay at home hidden? Do you do trick or treat with your children? Very, very interesting tradition. I was looking a little bit this morning about the origins of the tradition, and I was wondering, because Halloween is not something that is Spanish at all. This is something that when I was little, I didn't know anything about Halloween, and eventually, because, it drives good business, so it was imported. But we did celebrate Hallows Day, and not Hallows Eve, but Hallows Day, which is the next day, 1st of November. And we call it All Saints Day. El Día de Todos los Santos. We call it like that. And I find it very remarkable that on the previous day, at night especially, we celebrate darkness. And on the following day in November, we celebrate light. Yeah, the saints represent the light, and the monsters represent the darkness. And so I wanted to find a little bit of the history. I'm not going to go in depth into it, just to say it was some Celtic festival. It was coming up, and at the end of the harvest. Harvest is considered the 5th season. Yeah, there's winter. Harvest could be at the end of summer or at the end of autumn. We don't really know. I mean, depends on what kind of fruit. You could do harvest also in the spring, so it depends on what kind of fruit or vegetable you are collecting. But we do have those spring, summer, autumn, winter, and the harvest. So very interesting that at the end of the harvest, just before winter comes, there would be this Celtic festival in which people would lit big bonfires and dress up with these funny costumes. And from what I read, apparently the idea is to fool the monsters, to fool all these spirits that are hanging around. And by dressing up like them, they don't see you. So it's kind of like hide and seek with monsters. That's very, very interesting. And that would be the origin, and then it got mixed with Hallows Eve, All Hallows Eve, which is a very Christian tradition. In Christianity, for those who are not Christians, we have a patron saint for every day, and on the 1st of November is the day for all the saints. So that's when we celebrate all saints, and saints is the light. And we celebrate that in the moment when the days are growing darker. The days are shorter and the nights are longer, and we are coming into the depth of winter, which is going to be the dark season of the year. And so we celebrate that darkness with the Halloween party at night and the light on the following day. Now that's obviously very significant immediately from a yogic perspective, because light and darkness, that's a concept that we explore very, very often. And even philosophically, from the yin-yang point of view, that's very, very relevant. But I want to explore a few concepts before we go into the yogic aspect of it, how is so significant the celebration of Halloween. I love the concept and the idea of it. And there's a few reasons for that. And I will bring a few curious notes here. There was one anecdote that I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was telling me how he's much taller than me, and and I am really tall, so I'm over 6 feet, and he's like this bigger than me. So that's an amazing tower of a guy, and he dressed as a vampire, and he went to this party, and he told me that dressing as a vampire with all the fake blood and the teeth and all that, and the cape and all that, and going to that party, and everything was designed for darkness with the candlelight and so on. He had the most spiritual night he had with his friends than he had ever had. Or that's how I remember that he said that somehow being a vampire allowed for having spiritual conversations which they never had before. And I found it so remarkable because, and true as well, I've shared the same experience, and I will share something from my experience. But the way he was saying is that a vampire is immortal. And so by faking that he is immortal, let's say, even though, we have an immortal soul, our soul is immortal, our existence is immortal, this life is just a period of time, and then we die and then we come back again. But for many people, they reject that concept, they reject that idea, and they reject the concept of immortality as well. So by pretending that you are a vampire, they allow you to talk about immortality in a way, and they engage with you in that conversation. That's fascinating. So I will now share my relationship to vampires, which is quite strong as well. When I was young, around, when was that? 17, no, even before, 15 years old, there was a group of friends, and started with one classmate, and we had a role community, where you play role-playing games, like over the table, not like computer, but like talking. The basic idea is somebody is the master of the story, and they are telling you a story, and you are characters in the story, and you are following the story, and they say, well, this is happening, what do you do? And you're like, well, then I will jump, and I will try to be very fast and catch the train, and whatever. You are making up a story in that. Well, the stories I joined that club, we could say, and we were vampires. And that period of my life was so amazing. I enjoyed so much those years. And I have to say, those were pretty dark years for me, literally and figuratively, because I was dressed in black and I was shaving a lot of my hair, and clearly the face was shaven, and I was, wearing this hair like this to the chin, and wearing a pyramid with an eye on my chest, things like that. I was agnostic, atheist, everything that you can put an A in front of. And I was trying to pull away as far as I could from religion, really, more than from spirituality. But, my parents were yogis, and I had always seen spirituality around my house, but I had also seen, the effect of having spirits around the house, because we experienced that. So I tried to pull as far as I could. But during that period of my life that I was pulling away from spirituality and denying God, I was pretending to be a vampire at night. So I would go with these friends, and sometimes we would play in the weekends up until 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I had to walk almost 2 hours in a very, very dark region of the city, a kind of dangerous area. Nothing happened to me ever, but I was exposing myself to a lot just to be able to be with those guys and playing vampire, which is very significant because the way back would be an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of full darkness, and very scary sometimes, some regions. And so I was exposed to fear. Now, this is the concept of fear, how it will play out. Now, why was it so rich for me playing vampire? Now, when I look back, I recognize that I was allowing an expression of a part of myself that was not being listened to, that it was not being spoken. And the vampire is also an immortal creature, right? I mentioned that. But also, the vampire is cursed by God. Is cursed to be an immortal creature in exchange for having to suck the blood of humans and animals. And it's a curse, but it's a curse from God. So you can be an atheist, you can be an agnostic, you cannot believe in any of this. And yet, when you put on the mask of the game, when you are sitting in that context and when you are role-playing, like, one time a year, everybody does this in Halloween, right? Well, everybody, everybody who wishes to participate. We were doing that in role-playing, and that's a moment when you can pretend that you believe in God. And that's very interesting and very important, because for somebody who is trying to escape spirituality, how come I was so attracted to the concept of being cursed by God? And therefore, it was like something about my vampire, particularly the one I was playing with, was trying to become human again. So his whole game, and it would go on for years. Even the same character, you would do many stories, and we had an amazing master, Javier Duran. He was incredibly good at creating these intricate stories with lots of things behind, and we were really addicted to this. And I tell you, there's worse addictions than sitting together with your friends and talking. We weren't doing drugs or smoking or drinking alcohol or doing anything that young people often do in those ages. We were sitting in the dark and pretending to be vampires. And that was speaking. We weren't even rehearsing it. So that was an incredible time to explore this monster that was trying to become human. And that was the motivation for my character. And he was battling with the inner monster inside. And sometimes you have to battle it with dice. You have to throw the dice and so on. And I think it's very metaphorical, because that's how we live as humans. We all have our dark side. And we all battle with the monster. And the thing is, to even reject or suppress completely that wild side within us, that's not advisable, because there is some magic in it. There is a magic, and there is also a power within the darkness and a magic within the monster that if you don't learn how to relate to it, we lose that magic. So I think it's very relevant, especially for every man. I find it very, very relevant that we learn how to communicate with that monster and learn to channel that magic without being a victim of the consequences of allowing the monster to come to the surface. So let me say it like that. So role-playing was extremely nice opportunity, that kind of setting, that was a perfect framework in which you can work out your issues as a human. No? And you can be anything you want, because that's a story. It's very much like Halloween. You can be anything you want, and you can explore and maybe also express something that is hidden and suppressed, and somehow find release through that, or find some learning through that. Like my friend going to this party with his friends who did never engage in this kind of conversations, would never ask about yoga or anything like that. Well, he was more like a numerologist, not so much a yogi, even though he later became a one. And being able to talk about this with people who normally reject that. And that's the thing that was happening when we were in the context of role-playing. We would have conversations about God. And that's all that you need. If you want to reject something from your life, don't talk about it. So by not speaking about God, you wipe it out of your life. You want to talk, if you want to have something in your life, then talk about it. This is a good general rule. How much you want something in your life, then just bring that word into your day-to-day conversations. You want more love? Do you want more love in your life? Then tell me, how many times do you use that word in your day? Isn't it obvious? Right? Do you want more peace? How often do you use the word peace? because there is power in words, and just by saying that word, you're already creating that. So allowing yourself to, have the proper framework and excuse to talk about God without being religious. That was my excuse, right? I don't want to be religious. I will find my context, and my context was role-playing, and in that context, I could talk about God, and I could blame God. But you know what? I was relating to God. So there's another story I'm just remembering now. I don't remember whose guru he was, one of the Sikh gurus, but somebody came to the court, and there was some villager, from the village, and they were, please Guru, do something, because that neighbor is horrible. We are so disgusted by his behavior, and every day he does the same. In the evening, as the sun is setting, something like that, he comes to the roof and he starts shouting all sorts of horrible names to God. He's just cursing God and cursing God. and they say, so please, can you do something about it, to the Guru, no? And I don't remember how it went with what the Guru said back, but the basic idea was something like, I'm not going to say anything to him. I'm going to say something to you, because he's found a way to connect to God, and he is expressing whatever his frustration or whatever is happening to him. At least he is connecting. At least he is having a communication. You are not having it. So even cursing, it's a communication, and it's a beginning. And God is all compassionate, so eventually you can make peace with God. But if you don't open the communication, then there is no possibility for that. So by me exposing myself into that framework of the role-playing and exploring every anger I had in relationship to what I thought it was God, coming from the Catholic and a particular kind of Catholic understanding of God, I was getting rid of that. And eventually would allow me to be more neutral, so that when I found my spirituality again, I was more ready to accept it. And so Halloween is excellent for that. Halloween is an excellent, and role-playing too, so I recommend that. Halloween is an excellent opportunity to explore your fears, and explore the darkness within, and explore the wild side and the monster side. If you dress as a skeleton, you are a skeleton, you are dead. And the conversations you're going to have during that night are going to come from death. And not only is it going to be difficult for you to face death, you become death. You are dead. And you can even not just be dead, but be death, And so in any conversation that arises during that night, you can embody that as a personalization of that concept of death. And that can be very, very healing, because when we don't talk about it, we put it away. We put it aside and we pretend it doesn't exist, like not mentioning the word peace or love or God. But when you allow the word death, you can have a relationship to it. In a way, we used to have sex used to be taboo, and we would talk about death. Death would be much more present than it is nowadays in our conversations, in our day-to-day. And somehow throughout the last 40, 50 years, sex is very, very easy to talk about. We can talk about sex anytime with anyone, and everything is acceptable. But death, if you bring the topic of death, a lot of people are going to be put out, is it? Like it's putting them down or something like that? Not putting down, I don't think that's the term, but they're not going to feel they don't want to participate in that kind of conversation. So they're going to be putting themselves to the side and leaving the conversation. So we stop talking about death, and that's one of the few, if not the only guarantee that we have in this life, that we will die. So by not talking about it, do we think it's easier? No. What happens is that the unknown of what death is becomes bigger. And here we come back to the topic of fear. Do we fear death? Not exactly. What we fear is the unknown. What we fear is that After we die, what happens? That unknownness, that darkness, yeah, in our field of view, that cloud that doesn't allow us to see what's happening there, that's what we fear. The first time televisions appeared, people would freak out. Is there a person inside there? Are they hiding in there? What's happening? This is crazy. I don't want this machine. Is this demonic or something? Even before that, the first time a radio appeared, what? There's a person speaking through that machine? What is happening? And it would be scary. Why? Because it was unknown. It was unfamiliar. And the more it became familiar, the less scary it became. So scariness is in direct relationship to familiarity, or inverse, the relationship to familiarity. So if you are afraid of something like the unknown, the more you expose yourself to the unknown, the less the fear is going to grip you. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience fear about that, but the fear is not necessarily going to paralyze you. And we're going to go into fear much more in depth. Today is about fear. So we are introducing the concept of fear through this angle, and we will go into the karma and the dharma of fear. I always explore both sides, the dark and the light. So we will do those sides on the fear itself. But first, this idea that when we pull things away from our speech, away from our experience, and when we don't talk about those things, they become part of what we don't know. And when we don't know, we are afraid of that. So, Halloween is awesome to explore any topic. You become a skeleton, you become death, and then you have a conversation about death. And you have, therefore, an opportunity to face that thing that you generally hide. And there's something else also about Halloween. When we are doing Halloween, we are putting on masks. And you pretend to be that thing. And the thing is, we are always wearing masks. It's just that we don't realize. The masks that we wear in the day-to-day, they are so resembling truth that we believe they are true. So when I put on the mask of who I believe that I am, and I say those words carefully, who I believe that I am, that's not who I am, who I believe. That means it's linked to my beliefs, and that's linked to my mind, and therefore my experiences and the way the ego formed when I was little. Those layers of subpersonality are very much like masks which separate my true core self, who I am, what in yoga we call the Atman, the self, from how I present myself to the world. Okay. So we all have these masks. When I talk to my daughters, inevitably I put on the mask of a father. And I try to be as real as I want. I mean, one can do the best that they can. And I always try to be as real as I can, both teaching and not teaching, and with my daughters or with my mother or with my neighbors. I try to be as real as I can. But it's inevitable that as long as I haven't fully crystallized myself in the self in capital letters, I will be wearing masks. My ego is still at play, and I still put faces, and I speak with a different tone of voice to my daughters than to my neighbor. Probably. I try not to, but probably there's going to be some of that. And this is where yoga comes in. A lot about yoga is about removing masks. A lot about yoga is about encountering your true self. I mean, that's the whole objective of yoga, self-realization and liberation, through self-knowledge. And especially when you practice things like Gyan Yoga, through self-inquiry, you ask questions to yourself, and am I this? Am I that? Am I this? Is this me? Is this not? And I'm not the body. Okay, that's like a mask as well. I'm not the mind. I'm not the many layers of the ego. I'm not any of these subpersonalities. So, in Halloween, we can allow ourselves to put on a mask. And imagine the paradox if when you put on that mask, you can actually become closer to your real self. Because yin-yang, okay? So light and shadow, there is always both sides within us. And shadow doesn't mean something wrong. And it doesn't mean something bad or evil. Not necessarily. As I mentioned, there is some magic in the monster. The thing is, when we hide the monster away, how do we hide it? We hide it under masks. And next to the monster is the master. They live next to each other. And there is a very thin line. And yeah, I'm not encouraging anybody to just go into monstrous deeds, yeah, to just release the monster. It's not about that. You have to find the right context to express that part of yourself, to find the right kind of relationship, yeah. In psychology, it can be called like slaying the dragon as well. The dragon is like the monster. And sometimes you have to become the dragon. It's like in these stories where the hero goes through all these troubles, all these challenges to get to the final treasure. And when he overcomes the last evil thing that he has to destroy, is generally the custodian of the treasure. And as he kills the custodian of the treasure, he himself becomes the next custodian of the treasure. And now others will come to pursue the treasure. Now he's having custody of it, and he has to protect it somehow, and he finds himself in the same position as the last custodian. And then he realizes, oh my God, what have I done? But also the other one was an evil. Or was he? Right? So as we become the custodian, have we allowed ourselves to become evil, to find the treasure? There's a lot of things here. We are just talking very metaphorically today, but I'm choosing to speak in that level so that it may be more personally relatable to you rather than making an example. So you made out whatever you make out of this, but how it was for you in your life when someday you channeled the monster and you became afraid of it, and then you hid it away. And by hiding it away, you lost a part of yourself. Just think for a minute about that. How did I let my monster come out one day, and then I became so scared about it that I put it away, and now I lost a part of myself? I think as a man, there is something about violence that is inherent in the makeup of being male. There is some form of aggressive energy or violent energy that is boiling within us. It's linked to the element of fire, and men are more fire than women. Women are more watery. Yeah, women are water and air. Men are more fire and earth. So I'm talking very personally now as a man. We have all felt that fire burning within, and we realize how dangerous it can be. And then you may have an experience in which you let that fire out, and maybe somebody is harmed as a consequence. And then some other one, is expressing their fire, and you are the one who is burned. And you said, you know what, I will never let my fire out like that. But then, if you suppress that fire, there is a lot in that fire that you lose as well. And that's how we became meek and weak, yeah, in society, and we lose something very, very, very valuable. So, can you take the opportunity in Halloween to put on the mask on something that you have been suppressing and that you suspect that there might be some truth in that? Truth. Now we touch upon the concept of truth. Let's explore this for a moment. Truth is my real self, my Atman, the inner core. And all the other layers and masks that I put on it are masks. They are false by default. Now, part of truth is this nature that I am, and fire is part of my truth. And maybe one day I saw this fire and it burned me, and I said, I'm not going to go there. But then by removing all aggression or all violence from your nature, you are losing something extremely important that is also true. It's true to your nature. And not all of it is evil, right? You perceive it as evil because you were burned by it, or you burned somebody and then you regretted it. But not all of that is evil. There is something very valuable. Scalpel, that is a very violent act when it opens the body, yeah, and cuts the skin and the flesh and opens all the way so that the surgeon can go and remove a tumor. The scalpel, that's a very violent thing. And yet it is a dharmic act, a necessary one to bring healing. So in the same way, there is qualities in our nature, like for example this fire, but you can find other examples for yourself. It doesn't have to be fire. Okay, it's just the element I'm using right now. There is qualities of that nature that are true to yourself, who you are, and you have suppressed them by putting the mask that you are never gonna explore that aspect of violence, let's say. And actually that's a violent act against yourself, actually, to do that, to suppress that capacity of the scalpel to cut, yeah, to suppress that aspect from yourself. Isn't it a paradox that by putting on the mask of a vampire, you are, if you imagine like an onion, right? The core and the many layers on top. And every layer is a mask. And somehow we are out here and we are putting one more mask, the mask of the vampire. But actually, by putting that mask, you are actually contacting a mask that is much closer to the nucleus. By allowing yourself to be a skeleton, you can have a sincere and open conversation about death. If you allow it, you can have it. Even with people who are normally not ready to have that kind of conversation. So that's a very good gift. That's why I decided, you know what, we have to talk about this before Halloween. So to see if you can have an opportunity to explore Halloween in a different way this year, if you've never done this, you know, can I contact that part of myself that I'm scared? Okay, we are scared because we are not familiar. And we are not familiar because we have repressed it or suppressed it, or we felt that it was not appropriate, or we were told that it was not appropriate. Maybe our parents or our teachers said, no, children don't do that, or kids don't do that, or girls don't do that, or boys don't do that. And we suppressed it. But you know what? That was close to your essence, especially when you were children. When we were children, we were innocent. So that's close to truth. And yet, as innocent as children are, close to truth, they express something of their nature. And okay, it's not polished, it's not refined. And you know, that dragon, you have to know how to channel the power and the magic of the dragon. You cannot just let it loose. But you cannot just kill the dragon. There's something in it that is extremely valuable. So can we contact it in a way that we can explore that aspect of ourselves? That is the proposal for today. Now, if we haven't contacted it before, it's because we are scared of it. And the more we hide it, the more we become scared of it. As we are scared of those things which are not familiar. Let me take on a little rational thought experiment now. Okay. I'm going to assume you are not a Buddha yet. Okay? I have no right to do it, but I'm going to assume that. And I'm going to say, I'm not a Buddha. Okay? I haven't reached Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I'm not a saint. So, but imagine that there is a possibility in the destiny of your soul to become a Buddha. Yeah? Imagine that there is this possibility. There is a possibility, and we are told by the scriptures there is a possibility for you, Ardaas, for me, to reach that state. Okay? That's great, because, you know, there's a possibility. I'm happy. I'm not there yet, which means that Ardaas, that possibility of an enlightened person, an enlightened saint, That Ardaas I do not know. Right? Are you following? So if I am not there, I don't know that Ardaas. And I don't know his qualities and his capacities and his skills and his gifts. If I don't know that Ardaas is unknown. And if it's unknown, it's not familiar. If it's not familiar, it's scary. You follow? We're going into fear, okay? So a part of me, a very instinctive, watch the words, instinctive part of me, which is designed to protect my well-being and my survival, is going to trigger when I want to explore that aspect of myself, right? If I see a new animal, and I don't know what it is, a new spider comes in front, my first instinct from a biological standpoint, like any good animal, like we are, human animals, right? It will be to pull away, because it's unknown, we don't know. Be careful. It could be a poisonous spider and you could die. If you want your genes to come to the next generation, we better pull away. So we are designed to pull away from the unknown. And if we still don't know that possibility of who to reach, that possible unknown Ardaas, a part of me is afraid of that. Okay, we're going to end up celebrating fear. You will see how we're going with this path of the conversation, yeah? So a part of me doesn't know it. This is the same, there is another consequence of this thought, which is, if I want to get there, I will not get there by doing the same things that I do now, by thinking the same things that I think today, and by believing the same beliefs that I believe. I'm going to have to change a lot of my paradigm of what it means existing for me. And that means that I need to expose myself to a new possibility of how I could be. This is why I enjoy uncomfortable conversations. I sincerely say that. I enjoy when I'm talking to somebody and it's uncomfortable. It's strange, it's weird. That person, how can they think like that? And it's like, they are so far away from my way of understanding the world that it just opens the possibility for something I had never considered. But you know what? The possible Ardaas is in that realm of things that I've never considered. So somehow by exposing yourself to the unknown, you have a capacity to reach farther in yourself that you have never reached before. So that's why we recommend exposing ourselves to a wide variety of different cultures and thoughts, and don't surrender yourself by people who agree with you, but actually have meaningful, healthy, constructive, respectful conversations with people who don't agree with you. That's very healthy. Now, it's different when you go into arguments, and it's not necessarily debating, but can you try to find how for them it makes sense? So that's a way to relate to the unknown in the other one. This is like saying, God, look, we are all connected, we're all one, and God is everywhere, and God is also in the other person. And if the other person is saying this is what they believe is true, so by me allowing myself to connect with them, even if I don't believe it, well, I have a chance to connect to that unknown within them. And if I want to be more familiar with the idea of the possible Ardaas, or also familiar with the great unknown, which is God, then I need to engage into this type of situations and conversations. Therefore, that's how Halloween becomes so relevant, and an opportunity to meet also different aspects of people that you don't generally know. Your neighbor always seems so serious, and suddenly, he's with this mask and eyes are painted and he's becoming somebody else, and they're like, whoa, are you like a witch? Oh, that's amazing. I love talking to you as a witch. Let's have a nice conversation. I will be the skeleton. You will be the witch. Let's talk. That can be so enjoyable. And it's also playful and it's kind of safe. Yeah, so you have a safe framework like me role-playing to explore that aspect. So that's very important. And become familiar with the unknown and with this monster within. Let's face the fear then. What does fear does? One of the things that you can experience immediately when something scares you is it brings you to the present moment immediately. It's like, wow! Right? And you can see it in the expression of the face, the eyes opening up, the eyebrows rising, and even the mouth opening. It's like a moment of fright. Well, the mouth opening is opening your ear so that the hearing is enhanced, the eyebrows going up and the eyes opening so you can see better. If there is something scary going on, you want all your senses operating at 100% so you can perceive the danger, if there is a danger, right? So fear is, again, instinctive drive to survive that is putting you in a state of alertness to perceive what's happening. Well, pay attention to that. Alertness. Isn't that one of the qualities that we praise so much in yoga? Right? Alertness and consciousness. Hold on. That's a virtue. Yeah, being aware, being conscious. If you are distracted, thinking about anything else, and suddenly you hear a dog barking very close and you get a fright, you are going to be in the present moment for sure, right? This whole idea of, Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, you are in the power of now. So by being afraid, it's like a jump into the present. So that's already very, very interesting. Another thing that happens is your breath stops. Yeah, it gets stopped. And I can also imagine it like when you think that somebody is haunting you, right? There's some shadow, you're in a dark alley and you hear something. Right? Eyes open, ears open, and silence, not even a breath. You want to hear everything. What is it? What is the sound? And the breath stops. It's interesting, because the breath stops at death. So for a moment you are in probably the closest point that you can be to death, because you are in the moment when there is no breath. So that's very interesting. Actually, a lot of meditations which explore no breathing, holding the breath, whether in or out, more out than in, but whether in or out, you are exploring your connection to death. So if anybody has had some issues that are blocked in relationship to death, you will experience the emotional charge of those issues as you practice the pranayam. These pranayams where you inhale and you exhale and hold without air, and maybe you are pumping your navel, contracting some muscles. I'm just thinking right now one that you are inhale, exhale, and you hold. And then you pump, mulband, I think it's 26 times without air. 26 is like the number of vertebrae to go up the spine. So you are pulsing from the bottom and you're going 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 in the emptiness. And that's really scary. A lot of people find it really, really hard to do this kind of meditation. And it's hard because you are experiencing not having breath, and the feeling maybe that you are suffocating and that you are about to die. So that's very interesting. Yeah, as a monster comes, or you think there is a monster, we go into that state automatically. We go into the phase expressing fear, which is a universal emotion, by the way. Even animals will do the same, raising eyebrows, opening mouth. You will see it in animals too. It's universal. And across cultures, all the cultures in the world do the same. You will do that and stop the breath. Okay. So far we have identified a few things that connect fear with the death and the beyond, and with the present at the same time. Interesting, eh? How both are connecting? Have you ever thought about this before? Have you ever connected these concepts? I find them remarkable. But there is also a karmic side to fear. These are two dharmic expressions of fear, okay? Let's explore some karmic ones. If you had a frightening experience in the past, let's say when you were little, and something really scary happened, maybe you know that dog that is coming and barking, it happens when you are very young, and you are not ready to deal with that. You know, as I mentioned, I enjoy uncomfortable conversations with people who disagree with me. If that happened when I was little, I would be very, very, very uncomfortable myself. So I would feel something very wrong, and I would be afraid of that kind of conversation. And I was very afraid of conflict as well. A lot of people experience this. Yeah, it's linked to the aspect of seeing the fire in a way that you don't like, and then you disagreeing and you deciding that you would never want to explore violence and aggression within you, and you want to be a peaceful guy. But you know what? By doing that, then we become afraid of conflict. And then when somebody is doing something and you disagree, but rather than having a conversation and trying to find some understanding and a negotiation in what to do, you avoid the conflict. And by avoiding the conflict, maybe with one person that you have only one interaction is possible, and that's fine, and that's it, you never see them again. But if it's your partner, or if it's somebody that is next to you in your life, that can accumulate. Avoidance of conflict. And the thing is, I've learned through the years, also as a teacher, that the path of the teacher is to go through confrontation. And it's an art to learn how to confront without conflict. Yeah, confront without conflict. And the line is also very thin, but it's important to explore also where these lines are. And if you are afraid of conflict, then that aggression that you felt that it was damaging for you, or the conflict that was arising and you felt afraid of as a child, what happens is that just like it takes your breath away in the moment, it becomes crystallized. It becomes, crystallized, particularly in the diaphragm, especially because the diaphragm is the muscle that moves for the breath. And then there is something blocked, and the diaphragm is the gateway to the heart, right? It's at the, I call it it's like the lock, this is where the lock is to the second cave, the cave of the heart. So I have a video on this if you want to see, on the 3 caves and the 3 locks, and opening the locks to awaken the Kundalini and so on. But the basic idea is, this is our heart, and to access our heart, we access through the breath as well, but the breath is regulated by the diaphragm, and in the diaphragm there is a lock, and there is a key. But the lock is very much, it can be locked. It could be very easily locked by one of these experiences. A frightful experience when you are very young. The second of the 3 granthis, the 3 knots, is the emotional knot. The first one is the material, the second one is the emotional, the third one is the spiritual. The first one is on the root chakra. Okay, so the emotional lock can get locked by an emotionally traumatic experience. So what happens then is that it becomes manifested in your breath in a blockage at the end of the inhale. So there is some retention at the end of the inhale that is never fully released. And so when we are doing long deep breaths in yoga, it's interesting, like when we are starting the video, I put here a little scene with I have the elephant over there, down there, and they say breathe long and deep. The stream is going to start soon. Some people just coming into yoga, starting breathing long and deep, can be very shocking, because as you are breathing deep, you can contact those parts of your diaphragm, which normally we don't use. Out of the 100% capacity of our lungs, we use only a little part, unless you do some strong physical exercise or you are trained to use longer. Maybe you're a singer, for example. in the day-to-day, normally, and especially consciously, we use very, very little. And even unconsciously, we use only this little part. So to actually go into this realm, the realm of up, yeah, because look, if something is scary, yeah, we inhale and block, yeah, we inhale and hold. So the blockage is at the top of the lung capacity. So by inhaling deep, you can touch those residues of emotional traumas that you may have had, that they became crystallized, yeah, from days gone. And then as you exhale and go beyond the regular capacity, but deep, 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 and empty, that's when you touch the other one, the one that tells you that someday you are gonna do your last exhale and you're gonna die. So breath is incredible to do psychological work and working with trauma and so on. And touching the top and touching the bottom can be very confronting for a lot of people. But this is something that we explore in yoga a lot. And we generally build up slowly, yeah, to get to those levels. But today we're going to explore one of these levels. We're going to do a little pranayama that is going to touch those things. So we talked about the holding of the breath. Sadnam, super Sadnam, Luisa, hello, thank you, and welcome to the stream. I'm glad you are enjoying it. Let me know if it's touching you in some particular way, or if you want to tell me how you're going to be dressed up for Halloween, you can do that. So the fear has some karmic aspects. There is holding the breath, and that could get crystallized within the diaphragm. And there is, by the way, that another thing that I didn't mention. The diaphragm is the gateway to the heart. I was going to go in that direction. I didn't finish the thought. Now, the heart can be, we can say, it's more like open or close. That's the dynamic that it can have, just like the beating of the heart. And it's very interesting to find that fear is actually the opposite of love. Yeah, many people think, no, love is the opposite is hate, but not really. Actually, the emotion of hate is very, very different from love. It's a different signature. It's not the opposite signature. It's a different signature. But something very clearly, when you love, the heart opens up. Even physically, you can feel it in your body. Even your breath becomes wider. Right? You fall in love. So it's like, did you notice? What happened? What did I do? I exhale. Did you notice? And there was a moment of inhale and pause. And there is this exhale. Did you notice? It's the opposite of the fear. How different. It's actually the same mechanism, but in the opposite way. So the love is opening the heart and is a pause with a release, while the fear is closing the heart and is an inhale with a lock. And that's how a very scary situation can paralyze us. Yeah? Just like the breath can get paralyzed, we paralyze ourselves. We physically get paralyzed. And that is closing our heart. So the consequence of that is that it's closing our heart, which is something that we don't want to do as yogis that we are, right? And but it has the other sides. Let's remember, fear brings you to the present moment and wakes you up. Yeah, opens the eyes, opens the ears. Yeah, it brings you to the right now, and you are holding the breath, so you have a moment of silence, because we spend the day too much thinking in our heads and too much going through our stories, and we spend 99.9% of the time thinking about the past, rehearsing or remembering or regretting or things like that, or projecting towards the future and fantasizing what may come forward. And very little we stay in the present. But when the fear comes and something scary happens and you stop, that's a moment of silence. You are not thinking within because you are trying to pay attention to see if there is any monster around. So you are more available to listen. And you know what? In yoga, listening is also a gift. It's the gateway towards shunya. The shunya state is zero, the state of zero. And through sunya means listening, shunya means zero. So through listening, you come into contact with the zero. And when you make the zero to your ego, that's when you become the 10. Yeah, you can touch the 10. The 10 is God. So God is on the other side of that zero that you can become by making zero to all these thoughts that are happening. We are having a course on the Yoga Sutras in parallel to these conversations and these live streams that we are having on Thursdays. On Tuesdays, we have the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutras tell us, Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is when all these chitta vrittis, these movements of the mind cessate. Well, you know what? You know when they cessate? With a big fright. You are not thinking. If you pay attention, you have a big fright. Maybe that will trigger a number of thoughts, but in the very moment that it happens, blank, and you are fully aware, fully conscious. Isn't that incredible? That's what we look in yoga, a fully conscious state where the chitta vrittis are calm. Who would have said that, right? So there's some incredibly powerful dharmic qualities to fear. Also, I think mentally it triggers a lot of chemicals of excitement and so on. That's why many people, especially during the adolescent years, when between something like 16 until 25 years old, I believe the brain is not fully integrated, and a lot of our capacity to assess risk is reduced, and we seek peers validation. Yeah, and we seek also belonging to a group. So I want to be a group I want to be part of this group of friends. I want them to accept me. I want validation from them. And then we are building each other up to do something scary. And we don't assess the risk of the scary thing. And so we end up doing this scary thing. And then maybe I regret it or not. But you do these risky things that later you will think like, how did I do that? Why did I do that? What need was it there for me to do that, right? But it was exciting. So there is all these chemicals being released when you explore excitement, and that's explored through fear. You will see people who get addicted to that. I loved going to the mountains. I used to do it a lot before I got married. And I don't do that much now. Maybe I'll have to take it back again. But I loved going into the mountains. And I remember a friend of mine, he was in the middle of an avalanche, and later he was telling me about it and how scary it was. And some people, after an experience like that, they feel that they were so alive. They felt so alive in that moment. And if they survive, when they survive, if they do, sometimes they get hooked and they want to repeat the experience. And I remember he was like, I know that a part of me is kind of fascinated and wants to come back to the same place. And I was like, are you serious? Why would you do that, right? And I think it was in the Mont Blanc in France, and very, very scary stuff. And in the mountain, you cannot make mistakes. You can put the foot correctly on the snow. You are even with a rope and so on. And there is a number of safety things, but it's never 100% safe. You know that when you are on the mountain, sometimes there is some danger, and you can put the foot on the snow properly 1,000,000 times, but if you put it one time wrong, in the wrong place, you can go sliding down the mountain. So it's scary. It's also exciting. And some people who start mountaineering, they end up, you start hiking, you go to mountaineering, then you go into climbing. And some people go into this, how do they call it? base jumping. Have you seen this? Base jumping, crazy people, they jump off a mountain with a body suit to fly, and they are flying at a few meters from the ground. And you know what? When they are doing it, they say how incredible it is, and they are talking about how it makes them feel alive, but most of them die. Most of them end up dead. The true, base jumpers, most of them end up dead. And even solo climbers. I think there is a great amount of solo climbers who just died. And then you see Alex Honnold, he's an incredible man. He's still alive. And you're like, God bless him. I don't know how he does this. But I think he has a different relationship to fear. He may have even a slight distortion in his brain that he doesn't really feel fear in the same way as us. I'm not 100% sure, but I think in some interview he mentioned something like that. So Alex Honnold, he has this movie documentary was made about him, Solo El Capitan. I don't remember exactly the name of the movie, but something like that. Solo El Capitan. Capitan is a mountain in the US, and he was climbing it with no ropes. And so some people get addicted to that fear. Why? Because it releases all those chemicals, and it creates those dharmic feelings of being alive and being in the present. So let's go back. We have that fear creates these karmic imprints that make it paralyzed within us, and they may close our heart and leave a lock in place that we as adults later on, maybe many years later, we may feel unable to come out of this cage. The rib cage is literally a cage for the heart. It can feel like that. It can feel also emotionally that you are locked within those crystallized fears that you experienced in the past, particularly if you experience some form of PTSD, right? There's some traumatic event, and then it leaves some print on you, some memory that has been imprinted and crystallized or fossilized, we could say, almost like stone, like locked in place and very hard to release. But also fear has some dharmic qualities. And I think part of this concept of dharmic qualities, you can see how some spiritual traditions will relate to these qualities through this conversation on fear of God. Part of the conversations about the fear of God, I believe, connect to this concept. I don't think that this is about being afraid of God's punishment. I don't think that's it. God's punishment and fear of God, God as the punisher, that's like such a Catholic thing. I have something with Catholicism. And at least that form that I experienced when I was little. But the concept of fear of God, could it be dharmic? Could it be something that when you are trying to approach this concept, because we don't know how to relate to God, is this concept, this idea, this unknown, this great unknown, so wild, remember wild, so different from my everyday experience, so different, that it leaves us in this state of awe. That is very much like the state that you experience when you are in a scary situation. And it's a fear that is bringing you to a very pure state of presence, like something scary. It could be exciting as well. It could trigger all these chemicals that something incredible is happening, connecting to God. Can you imagine that? It's so difficult to even imagine because it's beyond the mind. It's not rational. So it's hard to imagine what God is. That's why, defining God it's a lost cause. But can we imagine the things that we would go through as we try to connect to that? As we connect to God and experiencing a connection to something so far from our everyday experience. Satnam Infinity, hello, welcome. Connecting to that thing which is so different from our everyday experience means different from what we are familiar with. You remember? We are afraid of that thing which we are not familiar with. We talk about yoga so much, about getting out of our comfort zone. Well, I don't think a meeting with God would be comfortable. That's maybe an unusual thought to have, but it's so out of what we know into the unknown that meeting that would have these same qualities of fear. This wonder and excitement and awareness and waking and present and breath stopping, mind stopping, death kind of moment. So when I read about fear of God, I relate to it in that way. Can we connect to that quality and that capacity? Imagining nothing is imagining infinity as well, yeah? And that can be scary too, the nothingness. So, do we want to avoid fear in our lives? Absolutely not. I don't think so. Because fear has those incredible qualities too. Now, the title of the stream was embracing fear. And I use that word embracing because one thing is facing your fears, which is, a lot of, popular psychology will tell you to do. But it's not just about facing it, it's about embracing. Embrace is something from the heart. Face is be in front. Embrace is something from the heart. And I'm talking about opening your heart. And if you are able to open your heart to fear, that's like a paradox by itself, isn't it? Because fear closes the heart. But if you can open your heart to that experience of like meeting God, imagine, right? The fear. But opening, not closing, not paralyzing, but opening, that embrace, that's an opportunity to trigger that state that could be so much more truthful than being with all these masks in front of me. And the thoughts are also like masks. So embracing it and also letting it go. Because this is like Patanjali was telling us about this in the other video of the Yoga Sutras. We were talking Vairagya and Abhyasa. Yeah, the practice, there's something that you have to stick to, something to hold on to, and the Vairagya, that was Abhyasa, and the Vairagya would be the letting it go. So can you hold on and can you open up and experience it and then letting it go? A thought for that. Sadam Isabel, hello. I will tell my experience of fear in the mountains. Yes, when you sleep alone in the mountains with the night, the presence of animals and sometimes storms, it is rich in lessons about oneself. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we feel so small, yeah, when we are into nature, in nature. That's why going to the mountains, it's an opportunity to meet the unknown as well. God is in nature, right? It's very big, it's very wild. And you also notice how little, how easy it would be for us to disappear from this existence, from this planet, let's say. Because it can happen anything, and you're gone, right? There could be a big wild storm, and you are off the mountain, and that's it. That's the end for this lifetime. and yeah, when life becomes so fragile, its value becomes more relevant, more immediate, more clear. You can taste it more. That's why fear makes us more feel alive as well. All right. Should we explore a pranayam? If there is a general standard acceptance to pranayams like alternate nostril breathing, Nadishadana, for helping when you are in a scary situation, because that's going to balance and at the same time strengthen your nervous system. And so that may help you to deal with whatever you have to deal with. I would encourage long deep breathing as well. Those are good. Those are always good suggestions. I remember even before I was doing yoga in university years when there was exam time, you know, the months where you would have exams. It could be really, really stressful and scary. And I remember every time I would get a new exam, I would put it on top of the table. Everybody would be like opening it and starting answering, and I would just put it down closed without looking at it. And I would do, if it was a long exam, like 2 hours and a half, I would do like 2-3 minutes of just breathing, just resting and just relaxing myself. I mean, I was doing yoga. I didn't know I was doing yoga at that time because I wasn't trained in yoga. I had just experience from my parents. I didn't really train into it until I was older. But I remember in the university, sitting with the exams in front, everybody panicking, feeling the fear around, and me choosing to just slow down and breathe deeply and go slower. So long deep breaths and also alternate nostril breathing, it helps to balance the hemispheres, balance the nervous system and strengthen the nervous system so that we can face whatever we are afraid about. But that's not what we're going to do today. This is just a general recommendation that is often given for fears. But today we're going to explore something else. Now, before we do the pranayama, we're going to do a funny thing. We're going to be yawning. Because if you notice when you are yawning, when you are opening the mouth for the yawn, the body is trying to grab as much oxygen as possible. And we are going, remember I mentioned the capacity of the breath, so the lung capacity, so you are going into the higher realm of the lung capacity. And very often we don't cross a certain threshold. And when the body needs extra oxygen, it will just automatically yawn. Yawning has other purposes as well. And it's extremely contagious. So if you are watching, get ready, because we're going to be yawning. But the thing is, what are we going to do? Why are we going to be yawning? Because do you notice how when you yawn, you cross that threshold, you touch the highest peak, and sometimes you cannot touch it. And then you're yawning and it's not happening. You aren't really satisfied. You know, these yawns that are not satisfying, and that could be like the most frustrating thing, right? And that's when you don't really reach the highest capacity of your lung. So you really have to cross that line and get to the other side. And then you're like, don't get there, right? You have to cross the barrier. And when you cross that barrier, that threshold, and into the highest capacity, and as you touch the ceiling of your breath capacity, then there is a release. And that release is similar to the of the falling in love. You remember? Love opens the heart and fear closes it. So let's fall a little bit in love with our yawning. Who would have said, we were going to be talking about Halloween and yawning today, but why not? So get ready for that, and let's explore that. Explore how you are reaching the top. Notice when you cross the threshold, and notice the level of oxygen in your blood is going to increase, so you are going to become more aware, more conscious, and then the release and the relief that comes as a result. All right? Let's try that. So let's start. Open the mouth. Allow it. You can try to do some sound. It's nice to do the sound. And if you're in public, who cares? Who cares? You will cry if you do it properly. There will be tears. Those tears are good. They're going to cleanse your eyes. And the thing is, this opening is also scary because you are opening your mouth and you're becoming vulnerable. And if we're going to be touching these emotions that are stuck within, we have to be ready to become vulnerable as well. So you see how many things are connected? And this is why, we cover, I have this tendency to cover my mouth. They say that it's not polite to do it in public, to do, yawn with the mouth open. But in Spain we say, open mouth, the flies go in. I'm not sure if there is any saying in English for this, but if you leave the mouth open, the flies are going to fly in. So you're scared of the flies going in, but you want to yawn, but then, so you cover your mouth. Let's do it again. That was not fully satisfying, was it? Let's try it again. Do some sound, some noise. Reach the top. You can growl like a lion if you wish. That's a little bit of the wild side. That's a little bit of the monster coming out. You can go in Halloween as the yawning monster, or the yawning witch if you wish, something like that. It can help. All right. So hopefully you could yawn and hopefully you cried a little bit. That's the idea, isn't it? Halloween makes you afraid, and if you are really afraid, you will end up crying. No. Right? Scary. We got to watch scary movies for a reason. Yeah? We find them exciting. Yeah, the House of Terror in the fanfares, or the roller coaster. House of Terror even more. You want to reach to that point. But today we're gonna be crossing. Okay, we're gonna be crossing that point and releasing and exhaling. And the idea, if we want to really let go, so if we have a fear that has been encoded, crystallized, it's traumatic, something that we want to get rid of. Remember, embrace the fear and letting it go. If we want to let go, if there is something that happened in the past and we want to let go of it, then we have to emphasize the exhale at the end. But the good thing is to reach the top before we exhale. Now, there is also a breath that explores that, but we're not going to do it today because that takes longer to explain and to guide. Today we're already making a long video, an hour 20, and we're going to do a shorter, simpler version. But another day I'm going to guide you in another, because I thought now about the fanfare. I remember the House of Terror, and I remember the Viking breath. I don't know if we ever did it in this channel. I cannot remember if I ever taught the Viking breath here in the YouTube. So let me know if I already did. If I didn't, we will do it another day. How about that? But today we will do a simpler version. And we're going to emphasize the exhale. But as you are exhaling, try to tune into that release that is like opening the heart. And there is a joy and an awe of finding that top of your breath and then letting it go. So we're gonna inhale, and then as we reach the top, we're gonna stay for a second, just like the silence that you experience when you are in the moment of fright, right? But staying, not closing the heart, but opening the heart, embracing the fright. You're going to stay in that state of very deep awareness. And then we're going to exhale. And I'm making it up, okay? I didn't read it anywhere. I'm making the pranayama up right now just to explore this concept. So allow me to be adding things. And as we exhale, I'm going to ask you to sigh. Yeah, sigh, producing some sort of sound in the outside. So we will be inhaling, and let's say today is 24th of October. So October is 10th, 24. So we will be inhaling in 10 steps, and try to make sure that when you reach the 10th, you are fully at your depth, at your maximum depth. So maximum lung capacity. And then and make the exhale long. Now, as you are inhaling up, you are counting 1, 2, 3. I will be counting first. And then the exhale is going to be very, 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 very long. So don't do it too short. Try to extend the exhale as much as you can, tuning into that feeling of release and awe and enjoyment of something, letting it go. Now, if you have had some traumatic event or something nasty happened that scared you when you were little and it got trapped in your breath, you can put the intention before doing this exercise to let go of that experience through the breath that we're going to be doing now. So let's start like that. Let's close the eyes so that we can fully concentrate. And inhale through the nose. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost full. 8, even more. 9, even more. 10. Hold the silence. It's okay if the end, there's no more sigh, there's no more sound, there's just air coming out. We're going to do it again. Pay attention as you do the sigh and the exhale that you are falling into the heart. This is something we have experienced a few times already in the channel, falling into the heart. But keep the heart open, okay? Embracing the fear. Again, inhale. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more. 10. Exhale, 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 exhale. Again, inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue. You have to reach the top like when you were yawning, the same capacity as you were yawning. 7, 8, 9, 10. Full inhale. One more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now relax the breath, stay silent inside yourself with the eyes closed. There's probably some tingling after doing that breath. You probably felt some tingling in yourself, in your cells, like being alive. Lots of oxygen in the blood. Inhale deep. Exhale. Inhale deep. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. You can open your eyes. Infinity said, I go high doing pranayama. Yes, definitely. you can get high, but it's a healthy high doing this. We only did like, I don't know, 5 breaths. Incredible, huh? But I think it was enough to get the experience, to get the opportunity. Nothing else to say today. Have a lot of fun in the Halloween and hope you explore the monster and let me know. Come back to the channel, drop me a comment. Drop a like as well if you like it, if you enjoyed the stream. And if you didn't, you probably stopped watching a long time ago. So if you're here still listening, maybe you enjoy something. If so, you can drop the like and share the video with others. Enjoy Halloween. See you next Tuesday with the Yoga Sutras. And next Thursday, we'll have another guest in the channel and we'll have a nice conversation. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you to all the members. Have a good week. Satnam.